All right, yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. I see this as a real opportunity to maybe update the wider microscopy community about what Prior is doing, as we've tried to promote our more recent advancements in capability. It's really sometimes nice to hear that people are surprised and quite excited about the types of thing that we're doing. And we're really trying to bring, as I say, bring everyone up to date with not only our advanced modular systems for microscope stages and the like, but also the fact we can do much more for people and make different types of technology commercially available. So our motivation for one of our revenue streams at Prior really is to help new technology come to market, to help those research only and novel microscopy imaging modalities become more of a reality and more accessible to people who maybe don't have such an extensive background in microscopy. They're coming into a laboratory environment with their own skill set that maybe isn't so tightly refined to imaging. Um, as many of you know, I'm sure we are an automation company. We've produced automation upgrades for microscopes for many, many years. But what we really want to hope to take advantage of is this idea of automation becoming the standard for microscopy. So microscopy becoming more turnkey for the layman as the average experience with microscopy in industry, I feel, decreases. And then kind of on a more Prior client level, we want to build design to production partnerships with our clients. So we're not only a design house, we're not only about manufacturing, we're trying to take our clients on the journey from prototype to final product, all with us, because we feel like we're uniquely positioned to do that. And one of the ways that we are uniquely positioned to do that is because we have design and production under one roof, and we have years, potentially 100 years if you go back far enough of experience with logistics and compliance testing and a really well integrated supply chain setup that allows us to fill some of the gaps that maybe some of our clients have in their own knowledge base. Our clients are experts in microscopy, they're experts in the type of microscopy they're trying to deliver, whereas we have a lot more expertise in kind of giving that technology global reach than maybe an immediate spin out does. And then finally, we want to contribute to and share in the commercial success of our clients. And that's, when we say partnership, we really do mean that we benefit from your success and you benefit from our success in developing our own processes as well. And to kind of illustrate that, it's really nice to be in a position after having really tried to go down this strategic route about 6 or 7 years ago to talk to you about a few different clients from all different walks of academic and non-academic life and how we've been able to take them forwards with us and mutually benefit from that. So I'll talk through each of these 5 case studies in time. And hopefully you'll get a bit of an insight into maybe something new, something old that you really thought was only something arcane and something you might see in a research-only environment now coming to market and being more readily available. And there's some really interesting stuff here, both on the very, very basic side and also on the really advanced side as well. And I'm sure there'll be some familiar names that I say as well. So the way that Prior tried to enable this type of relationship, first of all, was through its open stand product line. Now, open stand is a term that really only appeared at Prior, I would say, in a serious way, those 6 or 7 years ago. And what we were aiming to develop here was a scale-up ready, fully motorized imaging system base that you could use for prototyping in multiple different forms, but kind of underpinned by Prior's fundamentally strong mechanical and electronics design. That sort of concept would allow spin-outs and people wanting to develop a whole instrument the ability to iterate on something common and maintain a similar software suite throughout development rather than having to pick and choose from different suppliers at every stage in development. We would come on the journey with you. we would develop our modules in line with your kind of overall strategy for the product. Through having, as I say, those off-the-shelf components from our business of 30 years in microscope upgrades, but also being able to customize and design new modules as those new requirements came apparent to the clients themselves. So there are currently 4 different forms of OpenStand, and as I say, they share many of the same characteristics, but they kind of fall into different niches. And it's quite, it's quite nice for me as a product manager to see how people come to us with something in mind, and we're quite quickly able to divert them into one of these 4 buckets, if you like, and start talking about how we might develop their first prototype. So the first of these is the OpenStand U. It's probably the most typical in terms of its appearance and the types of modules that are available. I suppose it's a generalist system that allows you to do, all the common transmitted light techniques, common fluorescence, and other reflected light techniques. You can integrate laser autofocus. You can get, all the typical and some rather untypical motorization components on this. And we've had clients, develop multimodal microscopy systems. We've had people put together very, very heavily customized bright confocal systems, and also use this as a platform for neuroscience and electrophysiology type instruments, which is actually going way, way back. The original reason for developing an OpenStand light product over 7 years ago. We then have something quite similar, but it's as I say, it's quite interesting how some of our clients have really, really honed in on this smaller design from the start of their project. So the OpenStand M is really designed to be a dedicated reflected light instrument. So if you think about some of the advanced imaging modalities based on fluorescence, they really have no use for transmitted light, really. And we wanted to create a platform that would allow people to jump over the hurdle of, your typical microscopy frame, which has a lot of superfluous components on it and additional space that often you don't need or don't want because you're trying to integrate your microscopy system into something larger. So it shares many of the same characteristics, but lacks that advanced transmitted light capability. And we typically find these types of prototypes being built up in the first instance for those dedicated fluorescence or even higher level imaging modalities with fluorescence, industrial microscopy in particular, integration into larger instruments, which I'll talk about one of those just in a few moments' time. The OpenStand L is our large format system. It's most akin to a semiconductor style microscope, but actually we're finding that some of our more off-piste projects start off with an OpenStand L. It's about getting quite a complex set of multi-axis components in and around something that already exists, and it's people really requiring that flexibility to integrate something over a large and almost and sometimes pre-existing set of hardware that we have to work around. So we find ourselves working in kind of the more basic end of microscopy with this system. So macroscopy and stereomicroscopy that then might be tied to some really advanced AI analysis or something similar in the semiconductor space, or as I say, integration of optics into third-party platforms that really require the reach over different pre-existing hardware. And finally, I suppose over the last year, this unit's this OpenStand V prototype, the inverted OpenStand, is the one that's really hit the ground running. It's the newest release, but we've actually done more projects and units with this prototype than all others combined in the last 12 months. So it should be recognizable as an inverted microscope, but as you'll come to see, it can be tweaked and tuned into something much more advanced and dedicated to different applications. So once again, similar sorts of options. You've got fluorescence, you've got transmitted light, you've got hardware autofocus availability, but then you've also got interesting things like a motorized ancillary port, things like turf, in addition to up to 2 other entry or excitation points on the frame. So we've seen this used in live cell imaging, well plate screening, multimodal microscopy, and actually all sorts of weird and wonderful advanced microscopes this year. It's really been interesting to see how those projects have developed. Um, but to go alongside the hardware, as I've said, you need to have an idea of how you're going to get to market. And what's been really interesting uh, over the last few projects that we've done is that we've had initial discussions with clients who are searching for funding and they're searching for investment. And they've been really excited by the idea that they can tie Prior's technical capability to other things that shows their funders that they've got a real long-term plan and they've actually got a long-term partnership to realize the hardware, even though they themselves don't have the capability to do the manufacturing. So I've got a short video coming up next that will give you really an idea of if you start peeling back the layers of the onion at Prior, what actually underpins everything that we can do um, as well. So I'll just start that off for you. So there really is more to Prior than meets the eye. Most of our customers only ever see the sales, marketing, and design elements of Prior. But most of our buildings actually dedicated production. So what you can see here is our machine shop. We've got a diverse array of different machines, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail in a second. And this gives us complete control over the quality of the essential components that go into our systems. You know, if something needs to be changed, then we can change it in the knowledge that we're still adhering to our quality processes. We're not automatically having to go outside for that sort of thing. We do have a focus on throughput. Our newest machines can run 24/7 without operator support, but then we've also retained our order instruments as well to keep that prototyping capability. And then we can qualify the things that we make ourselves in-house using a dedicated set of analysis instruments. You're seeing our CMM here. We again can take that real nice fundamental core and the control of our manufacturing into design. So we can talk you through how you might develop the user friendliness aspects of the instrument that you're trying to realize through sample holders and the like, or we can take it to a deep technical level. As you can see here, this is one of our nano positioning rigs. We can tune instruments exactly as you need them. And we also have something quite academic looking in our physics lab. You know, we've got academic people who understand the language in which spinouts tend to speak, and we can realize new and interesting technologies from there for production. This is a quick insight into our manufacturing space. So this is our electronics room, and we have dedicated facilities for electronics, precision actuators, nano positioning, robotics, and OEM systems. And we can kind of trade experience between rooms because they're all next to each other. You know, we really take pride in the quality of the work that we do, and you can see here that you know there's a real level of precision that goes into each and every unit that we make for our clients. Yeah, so you can see we can go from from the macroscopic level of stages down to the fine tuning of different types of devices. So what you can see here is a range of the different types of products. There's a motorized stage from us. There's an XYZ piezo. Some of these dedicated metrology systems for nano positioning as well. We also do a majority of those, and then we can scale that up into production, have product on the shelf ready to go, and then all of that combination of factors comes together into your final open stand or OEM product solution. So as I said, we've got dedicated design areas. We can take your concept through to production, and we do that by having again a nice tightly integrated R&D department. We've got four major sectors. We've got software less on the image acquisition side of things. You know, we tend to leave that to our clients, or we try to help them find a third party who will do that for them. What we do in terms of software is we can take features that are required for an OEM and we can develop them as part of our SDK, and then we can roll out that SDK, which is open access, and make it accessible to other people as well. So it's a really nice way. We've had some features that we've integrated because we thought they were mutually beneficial to everyone, and we've also implemented some features that are specific to different clients. We then have our mechanical design. So mechanical design is extremely broad. It can cover, the advanced robotic systems that we make, or it can go through down to very, very small, simple actuators, or even just manual systems that are essential for user friendliness. Optical design, we're designing microscopes here, but we also have, a really successful laser autofocus system that's all underpinned by our capabilities in that area. And finally, electronics. We've got some really exciting developments coming along for our own product line, but we can also develop bespoke electronics if that's something that's required for a client of ours. As I said, the majority of our space in the factory is for manufacturing. We've got 4.5 square kilometers of manufacturing space, and a machine shop is on site. I can take a 1-minute walk from where I'm sat in the building right now, and I can be in a completely different environment, which, as I say, underpins the real success that Prior's had over the last 30 years. And actually, just under half the company is manufacturing staff. I think that makes Prior really, really unique as an organization. It means that we've got the full spectrum of people that you might need to talk to realize something specific about your instrument. One of the other interesting things about spinning out and making yourself production ready is being compliant with regulations and standards. This is again something that we know some of our early stage OEMs really struggle with, and we can give peace of mind that we're compliant with occupational health and safety management certifications and QMS certifications as well. And what that means is it gives our clients confidence that we're going to manufacture everything to internationally recognized standards. And that can be quite a nice selling point for spin-out companies as well, that they've got a really solid manufacturing base to build off of. As you've seen from the video, there's a big spectrum of machines that we have on site to do different things. I won't talk about the specifics of each of these, but this is just to kind of give you a visual reference of the fact we've got systems that can do lots and lots of different types of machining at high capacity. And we also have specialized machines and even an R&D suite of machines that allow us to do individual prototyping. So we've got the full spectrum of capability, and it means we can deal with clients of different sizes and at different stages in their development. We also have a really strong network of local suppliers who maybe have more specialist tools that we don't have reason to have on site. But because of the long-term relationships we have there, we can quite easily get access to different types of technology where they're really, really required, and have trust that what we ask for will be delivered. So you're not trying to build up those relationships from scratch as a nascent spin. Then, as manufacturing, what our manufacturing really falls into 4 areas. As I've said, we have electronics manufacturing. That's often where many of our new starters in manufacturing begin their career at Prior. And it's important to remember that the fundamentals of mechanical performance are also reliant on your electronics design. Then we have our stage room. I think Prior is best known for its motorized stages. Building motorized stages is sometimes more art than science, taking account different tolerances and differences in construction between different similar types of product. And our understanding of all that is really what allows us to develop systems that are at the level of performance on which we pride ourselves. Our nano-positioning manufacturing capability is ever increasing. We Prior purchased a company called Queensgate. Some of you in Britain may be aware that Queensgate was a spin out from Imperial College London in the 70s and 80s. And following that purchase, we've really been able to develop a range of market-leading microscopy devices underpinned by nano-positioning, and also allowed us to diversify into more complex fields. We do a lot of work with MPL on AFM and developing high-speed stages that they use in their research. Finally, we've got our robotics room. Really, our robotics room is almost an advanced systems room, and it tends to be the people that have kind of graduated from the electronics and precision actuation rooms, that then go on to actually build the instruments that our spin-out clients ultimately receive. So you can see how we're building on layers and years of experience to realize the types of products that our clients need. Um, Supply chain. So building an effective supply chain is a big challenge when spinning out. When you're prototyping your first instruments, if you're home building, you can quite easily manage the purchasing of components with non-dedicated staff, but quite quickly you need to start realizing economies of scale, and that starts to require a dedicated purchasing team. It requires a dedicated logistics team as well. Um, you also need to make sure that your supply chain is compliant with environmental regulations, and that can also be a key selling point when applying for funding. Prior being ISO 14001 compliant can really help in that area. And we also have really well integrated a really well integrated ERP management system. So again, all of that stuff that maybe seems uninteresting to a technological person, we already have up and running. So it can really help you to jump over some of those early teething problems when trying to do everything yourself or trying to do things with multiple different suppliers all at once. Brexit's also an elephant in the room. Brexit in some ways has been a challenge for us, but also has been a boon. And because we've been working under those conditions for such a significant amount of time, we have a really good understanding of how to import and export from Europe. We know we can de-risk things for you, and we can talk about what the best way for our clients to work might be in the context of Brexit. Another advantage, I suppose, of our experience there is we've become really accustomed with how to ship beyond Europe and internationally. And to help with that, we have four other offices in addition to our British head office with different capabilities. So we have a European office that can not only help you to have a German speaking, if that's important to you, technical liaison, but we can also help with import and export through that office. And then we also have offices in the US, China, and Japan that might give a new startup a way of importing and exporting into some key markets that would otherwise have been much more challenging because they can use our existing logistics chains to get products where they need to go. Finally, market readiness. So this is something that sometimes comes as a surprise to some of our clients. They not only need to think about the technical aspects of the design, they also need to think about the technical aspects of compliance. So almost all the devices we make go in some sort of box, regardless of the hardware that you put in there. As soon as you box something up, it becomes a new product, and that means that you have to think about its electrical compliance and its safety compliance as well. You're going to need CE marking if you're going to sell this product in Europe, for example. So this is just a comparison of two different approaches you can take. So EMC looks at the signals that are emitted from a product and also whether that product might be interfered with by other signals that would be present in an environment under standard operation. And you can see here just from the screen, there's differences in price and differences in the regulations that you need to be aware of when you start to go through your design process with us. We kind of have a framework that allows us to do prototyping and this type of compliance testing all in one go. And we can help you to identify the correct standards that you need to comply with. In a similar sort of way, as I said, you'll need CE marking really to sell into Europe. There are different standards. There are European standards and international standards for safety compliance. And you need to be aware of them right at the front end of your development cycle to make sure that when you have realized your product, you can actually sell it into the markets that you need to. And then there's the added bonus of laser safety, which is a whole different set of different requirements. Fortunately, we have experience in this area as well, both in terms of the regulations that you need to comply with, and also designing an instrument from the ground up to be laser safe in terms of light tightness and having interlocks built into the electronics, so that nobody can open a lid accidentally and find themselves staring at an infrared laser. So our process here is quite simple. We agree the markets and the directives that you want to comply with. We set up a contract, and then we take responsibility for working with a test house to facilitate those tests. We actually deliver the instruments to the test house ourselves. We don't leave that up to logistics. So your precious first system, pre-production system, is looked after by us. And then we also help with the engineering documentation support after that to make sure that you're fully signed off in the areas that you need to be. So you can see really through this, we are doing a lot more than just being a design house. We're actually getting you, really far along in the process towards actually being able to sell your product straight after this development cycle. You're not having to think about all of this independently. So after all of that, which I'm sure was quite a lot, but I suppose that's kind of the point. It shows you the level of complexity that goes into spinning out some of this technology. It's worth us talking about a few different examples. And as I said at the start of the talk, we have 5 different ones to speak about. So the first company that I'd like to talk about is Chip Nanoimaging. They are a really great example of a spin out that emerged organically from research, and they've really leveraged the advantage of OpenStand to get to where they are today. So who are Chip Nano? Chip Nano are a Norwegian company. They're a spin out from the University of Tromsø. And what they have developed is they've developed a photonic chip technology for holding and illuminating samples for high resolution, massive field of view imaging, all based around turf. And the reason they did this is because they developed something for research. There are papers on their developments. And then they found within the university there was a huge amount of demand for the things that they'd actually built. And what Oystein and his team and others in the Ahluwalia group at the university did was they originally applied for an EIC grant, but now they're also backed by corporate and technology transfer funds. What you can see on the right-hand side there is parts of an OpenStand that's then integrated into a much larger system that they themselves have taken more responsibility for developing. But the core motorization elements prior has assisted them with through OpenStand. So what does their OpenStand include? It includes what their ACP0 product is a combined super field of view turf, super res, and wide field fluorescence system. And I'll kind of talk through how they realize each of those aspects of the system in a moment. It's got motorized XYZ, filter turret, nose piece, and a motorized input changer for their light sources from us. They also have been using our hardware autofocus for some of the applications. And we also developed a T-mount design specifically to allow them to realize their massive field of view with the photometrics kinetics camera that they've used for their image acquisition. And then they've combined that with a multi-axis alignment system that they have themselves chosen to automate. How does the technology work? So that multi-axis alignment system aligns an excitation objective with waveguides within their chip technology. The sample's illuminated by an evanescent wave. Anyone who's familiar with turf will understand what I mean there. And what that's giving them is images with extremely low signal to noise. So they're getting extremely high resolution images straight off the bat at the chip sample interface. But crucially, because the excitation and emission paths are decoupled, they can image a much larger field of view with their collection objective than would otherwise be possible if they were using a single objective for excitation and emission. Um, their waveguide technology also ensures even illumination of the sample and ensures the image is free from artifacts. And to kind of give you a quantification of that, they've done a comparison of a objective-based turf and their chip-based turf system to look at the flatness of field across a single image. The field uniformity with the chip surf system they've developed is 96% over 300 microns, compared to 80% over 52 microns for a conventional system. Because of the type of images that they also acquire, they can combine this with their own image processing and different types of fluorescent labels to do things like Storm and FFSRM. And you can see there the type of the level of image quality that they're able to achieve over a massive field of view because of the fundamental mechanical technology that they've developed. There's also a focus on being able to do other imaging modalities as well. So I have a little bit of experience in CLEM from my research days, but it's really exciting to see the fact that they can take the chip technology that they've developed, they can do the fluorescence imaging that they need to do, and then they can process the sample on chip to make it ready for SEM and do that correlative light electron microscopy as well. The chips can also be used to seed and grow cells as well. So you can do all of your sample preparation from the point of seeding all the way through to imaging in a single vessel rather than having to transfer your samples into different mediums. So the journey that we went on with Chip Nano looks like this. They first contacted us through a distributor looking, as our clients often do, at the component level. But we, after discussing their requirements, were able to provide them with, quite an off-the-shelf open stand to get them going and get them working with our SDK. They then went through a funding cycle, and having that instrument on site there and being confident they were going to have a long-term relationship with us allowed them to get funding for the next stage of development. We were then able to iterate. So the first iteration that we did was we took them from a C mount to an F mount camera, and then we started to look at the footprint of the system. Now, originally it started off with an open stand U system, then we went to an open stand M, and then we found an optimal footprint for them that we now do as a custom design, because that's where they are in their project. We then implemented the dual light source input system because they wanted to increase the number of imaging modalities that they could have access to. Then they upgraded to T-mount. They were able to tune some of the optical design on their end to get an even bigger field of view out of the camera that they'd chosen. And then it's really only in the last year that we've stabilized the design, and we're now starting to talk about how they might spin out into production. Is the design meeting all their needs? Pretty much yes. How can we then take that into a more scaled up production cycle? In kind of complete contrast to Chip Nano, who were very much in the academic space when we first talked to them. They just started to talk about spin out. Hawk Biosystems is a Spanish company that again comes from a research background, but they were much further along in their development. And interestingly, and similarly to Chip Nano, they developed another piece of technology that had already allowed them to spin out. And then what they were looking to do was to make using that technology much more simple for the customers they were interested in talking to. And this is a really great example of how you can go from open stand to something completely new in a really short time period. It was really cathartic for us prior to get some feedback that the people who were backing Hawk at the moment in time, they were doing the prototyping. Hawk got some amazing feedback about how fast they were able to develop a whole solution. A lot of the credit goes to them for their software and testing, but the fact we were able to support them and support their timelines and meet the deadline that they really hoped they could was really nice for us. So Hawk Biosystems produce QF Pro, which is an assay for quantifying proteomic events in fixed clinical samples. I'll go into a bit more detail that in a minute. And it's underpinned by some research that was done at the Crick Institute many, many years ago. But some of the people that did that research, including Dr. Veronique Kaleha, are still there. She is now CSO. It uses an adapted fret film system to collect data at effectively less than 10 nanometer resolution. And at the time Hawk first talked to us, they had numerous accredited clinical biomarkers validated, and they published quite a lot of data on how they'd been able to um, determine different clinical outcomes for patients as well. Um, what should strike you is that I said that Hawk Biosystems started out with an open stand, and yet what you see on screen there is the instrument that they've ultimately ended up with within 12 months. It's unrecognizable as an open stand system, and prior is nowhere to be seen on it. And that's something that we really don't mind at all. We really want customers to take pride in what they develop, and really our relationship with you is to make sure that you're supported in production and technical support as you go to market. So the Violet 3 system is a fully automated fret flame. It's got motorized XYZ, filter turret, and a different sort of light source changer that's much more attuned to laser imaging because of a 488 nanometer laser that they have inside that box. That system is interlocked for laser safety. So if you open the lid, it's going to make sure that there's no chance of any light escaping towards the operator. There's also a water-cooled camera in there, which is something we again had to consider when we did the industrial design. And then it also has wide field fluorescence capability, and it can be used to image typical slides, FFP mounted sections, or well plate based samples as well. So what is the technology that really underpins Hawk's success? So QF Pro is, as I said, a fret film assay that allows them to analyze such things as protein-protein interactions, or the presence or lack thereof of post-translational modifications. And the benefits of this is that they're able to achieve much higher spatial resolution than even some of the advanced super resolution microscopy techniques that are out there. They get not only a quantitative readout, they also get more qualitative information and spatial information compared to other techniques. And it can be integrated into standard laboratory workflows. So what that was really meaning for them initially was that they were working with conventional microscopes, but conventional microscopes come in different shapes and sizes. They come with different software to do different things. And what that can mean in a clinical environment, there's too much for people to learn, and they wanted to develop an instrument that could do something more specific. A really nice example of how their technology can work is they did some analysis of two sets of biomarkers determining life outcomes for certain types of cancers. The presence or non-presence of a particular marker is currently used to stratify patients and determine their treatment routes. What they were able to show with the QF Pro technology was that actually the interaction between these two biomarkers was a more relevant predictor of a response to a particular drug than actually just the presence of one of these markers individually. So they're being able to make FLIM accessible in a clinically adjacent environment as it stands today, to help produce better outcomes for patients. So how did Hawk work with us? So Hawk's timeline was really short, as I said. The first contact they had with us was in mid 2022. 6 months later, they ordered an open stand, and they used that to validate that, the basics of our optics and ensure that the system was going to work for them with the other third-party components that they'd chosen. We then went through a relatively lengthy pre-production design review to try and morph the open stand into something more akin to what they wanted, and that's how we ended up with the industrial design you see on the right-hand side there. They ordered those units in late 23, and by the end of our financial year in March, we had delivered the first prototype and had a second prototype ready to go for compliance testing. We then spent a few months doing the necessary EMC safety and laser safety testing. We facilitated all of that. And now Hawk are in a position where they're starting to get their first production units come through to them, which is really, really exciting. And they've gone from really 0 to 100 in a very short space of time. One other factor that can really play on the minds of companies who are trying to spin out is, how can I gain confidence in working with a third party to develop my instrument when I don't actually know what my funding situation is going to be a year from now, 2 years from now. And Spartan Biodiscovery is a really interesting example of that. And it kind of shows how, we can start off working with you in a quite low scale way, but we can develop trust as we go. So if there is a period of even a year or more where you're looking for new funding, we can continue to support you and we can keep the conversation going. And as I said at the beginning, we're looking to build a long-term relationship. We're trying to make sure that we ride out any difficulties that you may have, and give you the confidence and sometimes the support to get that additional funding to start realizing larger scale production. So Sparta Biodiscovery are a spin out from the very prolific Molly Stevens group at Imperial College London. The fundamental technology behind the instrument is underpinned by the research of Dr. Jelle Penders, who's now the CEO of Sparta. The aim of the company is to develop tools for really drug discovery, looking at how drugs are formed, developed, the constituent elements that go in there, and how those drugs perform in different sorts of environments. And what's really exciting for them is that as a result of all the work that they've done and this really exciting technology that they've developed, they now have a partnership with Sartorius. The Aegis One is it's a Raman instrument. It's a laser trapping Raman instrument. The name Sparta comes from single particle automated Raman trapping analysis, and the name Aegis One is actually the name of I think the first Spartan king. So it's just quite an amusing name. The laser, they have a 785 nanometer laser trapping system that allows analysis of individual nanoparticles. Sparta themselves developed a customized detector assembly with a third party that wasn't prior. But then the bulk of the instrument that you see there, the casework, the XYZ mechanics, and all the compliance testing was also done by prior. And they have a really nice, simple user interface using aqueous samples. So although the technology behind the instrument is really complex, they're really focusing on making that technology accessible to a typical technician in a lab environment. The key advantage of the Aegis One is that it provides a hugely diverse array of data. It can look at composition, it can look at size measurements, and it can look at changes in those factors over time. It can look at single particles, it can look at multiple different particles in sequence automatically, and it can also look at different sorts of particles as well. It's not dedicated to one delivery mechanism for a drug, for example. you've got 4 different options available at least, if not more. Um, and then just an example of how they've been able to use that kind of multifaceted approach to analysis in a really interesting way is that when formulating new drugs, a key factor in the design is how it's going to be delivered. Typically, analysis of actually how much drug is released in a system is done in quite a it relies on a bulk measurement that requires you to effectively destroy the method of delivery and then analyze the total amount of cargo at a macroscopic scale. What Sparta allow you to do is to look at individual delivery agents of your drug and see how different nominally similar agents perform and what variation you have in a given sample. So they use this to look at liposomal formulation for a drug called doxorubicin, and they were able to basically show that there was quite a significant variation in the loading of drugs and look at different populations of loading and size for the different vectors in a given sample. So it kind of gives the end client for this an idea of how they might change the formulation process to find to get a more consistent drug delivery system developed. So Sparta, as I said, this was a long-term relationship from us. I remember Sparta very well because I was the one who picked up the phone when they first called us. We had our first contact with them in January of 2020, and we all kind of know what happened a few months after that. There was a pretty significant change to the market situation in April. But in May, we were still talking about the prototype specification, and we agreed to start the project in September. You know, we were able to ride out some of that uncertainty straight away for something that was outside of everybody's control. By the end of that year, we'd completed a prototype that we then integrated their laser system with. We did an on-site demo shortly thereafter, and that's kind of where the project stalled. They did a lot of performance testing, but there was also going to have to be a period where they spun out the technology a bit more from Imperial. They were still part of Imperial when we first talking to them, and then they were going to need additional funding to take the project to the next level. And we just kept the conversation going. We talked about things they might want to change, little things about the prototype that could be improved. And then, you know, almost 2 years later, we found ourselves in a position where the beta units were being ordered. We started the compliance testing, and then thankfully now we're in a position where the first batch of production units have been built and shipped, and we're looking forward to hopefully the next round of systems coming on order this year. All of these projects that I've talked about so far were relatively recent developments, but that's not to say Prior hasn't got pedigree in developing instruments outside of kind of the spin-outs we're trying to approach now. So we have worked with HD CASA as they are now for 15 years under different guises. And help them to develop a complete OEM system that's now very well established in the market that was all originally underpinned by our components. So who are HD CASA? Well, they're part of Hamilton Thorne, and they were formed by the acquisition of a Spanish company, Microptic, in 2022. But as I said, we've been working with them since since 2015 or even before that for some of their module purchases. They produce software for computer-aided semen analysis combined with microscopy hardware, and this company's been established since 1989. They do quantitative assessment of motility, morphology, DNA fragmentation, and other factors, and they operate on a product and service business model. And we find that increasingly some of the spin-outs we're talking to, they're doing analysis for customers and they're also trying to ship instruments at the same time. So it should be hopefully nice for some of you in the audience to hear that we're very happy to work in that sort of model as well. And that means that, you know, there's a whole spectrum of clients that we work with in terms of unit volumes. Um, the uh, the Scarscope is a fully automated benchtop instrument. It's got motorized XYZ condenser, two-position nose piece, built-in phase contrast imaging, a heat plate from a third party to maintain sample viability, and it can scan up to 1,000 cells a second and achieve up to 97% faster acquisition analysis compared to a manual operator. It's got an integrated PC, and although there are different components from different suppliers here, Prior actually completes the full assembly, including the piece, including installing the PC, and ships that as a complete unit to HD Castle. The benefits of this sort of technology, well, I possibly don't need to go through all of them. As I said already, the speed of analysis that you get from a system like this is really unmatched on a manual level. You also get less variation in the analysis that's completed. That quote there is from an independent study by Eurofins. And they can also build in artificial intelligence for analysis and to reject certain contaminants in samples also to help ensure the quality of the data. So again, HDCAS has started off by buying microscopy components from 2010 from us to upgrade manual Olympus and Nikon microscopes. The first conversations about a black box started in 2015, and we had an approved design by the end of 2016. We then went through a complete design loop over the following 18 months, and in that time, Microptic achieved ISO 13485 certification for the Scarscope. Prior itself is not 13485 compliant. However, we have helped multiple clients achieve 13485 compliance in their own right. So it means that whilst Prior can't manufacture and sell medical devices directly onto the market, our production is sufficiently well set up to allow us to work within that space with our clients. By the time the prototyping phase was over in 2019, we were really interested to see how the product would go to market, and it's been really, really successful over the past 6 years. I can't tell you exactly how many units have been sold, but I can tell you the number is significant. And that transition from Microptic being acquired by Hamilton Thorne and the creation of HD Castle was really, really smooth. We navigated that on all sides really, really well without any disruptions to production. So we can even deal with some of these complex commercial situations that arise inevitably from spinning out a unique piece of technology. Finally, in complete contrast to HD Casa, which was all about volume, and you can see how we've really mapped that out into production on a huge scale. We know that some of our academic clients, they're not initially thinking about that scale. They're just thinking about developing a product that kind of creates a workflow for users and allows them to build a customer base organically, even though their operation is quite small. We worked with a Hungarian company called Cell Sorter to turn a byproduct of research into a sellable product on a small scale to allow them to support their own technology that they developed to, as I say, assist in the research that they were doing. Who are Cell Sorter? They produce smart technologies for single cell handling, sorting, and isolation, including a unique piezo-based cell picker with dedicated software that they're originally selling onto commercial microscope frames. Research was done by Dr. Balint Szabo, ELTE. They were motivated by enabling image-based cell selection, and I'll talk a little bit about the differences between their method and other methods in a moment. And the funding for this spin-out was provided by EU and Hungarian national grants. The Cell Sorter is a fully automated benchtop instrument based on an inverted microscope. They've got motorized XYZ, filter turret, and a 2-axis micromanipulator that we developed specifically for this project. They have a high quality reflected light path from us, suitable for various fluorescence illuminators, so they're not tied to one individual supplier. It's quite nice for an academic environment to be able to reuse some kit that you've got on the shelf from previous projects. Um, and it has a dedicated sample holder as well for holding PCR tubes that enable the cell picking. The advantages of image-based selection over other selection methods go like this. Compared to flow cytometry, the Nanopic 1000 from Cell Sorter, it allows you to really select cells based on phenotype and viability, and it allows you to pick out rare cells from a sample rather than relying purely on a fluorescent signal to select cells. You can actually observe many more characteristics about the cell before isolating it to be cultured. Um, uh, and in comparison to DropSeq again, because you're making very specific decisions about what cells you culture up front, you're only creating libraries out of the target cells that you're interested in, rather than producing a lot of rather than wasting a lot of materials and reagents in creating an extremely large library, the majority of which you might never use. So the cell sorter timeline, how do we work with them? Oh, in a similar way, we started off working at the component level. They were buying fluorescence illuminators, so apologies for the jumping. We first discussed the complete instrument in 2017, and then they went through a funding cycle to oh, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the with PowerPoint. There is a timer on in the background. Um, we we after their funding cycle, we developed a prototype. They then went off and found sourced additional funding to spin out at a slightly increased volume. And that volume that contract with us and that funding came in 2023. The result of that was a contract for a small number of units that we've then been able to deliver piecemeal as they've developed their strategy for entering different markets. So first off, they've started off in the EU. Then they've delivered an instrument to the US and then an instrument into China. And just this year, we've delivered the fourth unit under that contract. So what's really nice, I hope to see, is that although Cell Sorter are working at relatively small volumes, we're still interested in supporting them, and we're allowing them to develop organically into the markets they want to go into without there being this immediate upfront requirement for volume from us. So it means that we can work with people who are really racing ahead, trying to get as many units as they possibly can out into the field, and also other clients who are maybe doing a more limited operation, but still have important technology to offer the market. So that hopefully gives you an idea of the scale that we can work at with OpenStand and how we can develop projects for people. Um, we we can also upgrade existing frames. We're still very interested in that component level type of business, and we understand that there is a real movement to reuse older microscopes for new applications, and quite often these spin out start off with older technology that's been upgraded at the component level. So you'll find all this information on our new website. You'll see we've got loads of different options, both for OpenStand and for other commercial systems. And you can get a real feel now for how Prior likes to work and how we can help spin outs come out of university, come out of academia, and realize commercially, the really interesting stuff that comes from all these clever people that work in that area. So if you'd like to know more, please check out our new website or reach out to me or reach out to our inquiries line. We've got loads of interesting stuff coming along in the pipeline. I really hope to hear from some of you in the near future if you've got an idea that you'd like to realize using OpenStand and take to market.